Okay, so just a quick side note before we get into this video. So I've been working on this video for just over a week now. The editing has taken me quite a while, and today Bethesda just released the DLC information. So some of the speculation in this video is proven and disproven by that announcement, but I still wanted to put the video out because I worked really hard on it. So yeah, just thought I'd put that in there before we get into the video. Hello, Hampyro here, and welcome to... I haven't really got a name for the show yet. We'll work on that. And today we're just going to be discussing Fallout 4 DLC speculation. So I've played a lot of Fallout 4. Like, I'm actually at a point where there's not a lot more I can actually do with the game. So I'm desperately awaiting that DLC announcement. So there's obviously been a lot of speculation about potential DLC locations in Fallout 4, and I'm sure that we will hear something from Bethesda any day now, at least if it follows kind of a similar suit to Fallout 3, which came out on October 28th, 2008, and then the first DLC for that launched on January 27th, 2009, just 13 weeks after release. We've already passed that 13-week mark with Fallout 4, but, you know, newer technology, maybe it's going to take slightly longer. As for actual official information from Bethesda, in terms of DLC, we've only actually heard from them early 2016, which I think they announced shortly after E3. Now, early 2016 could be really any time in the first half of 2016. I'm not expecting them to leave it that late. It's beneficial for a game developer to get the DLC out whilst there's still interest in the game, and also there's a bunch of people who have gone out and bought the season passes for the game, so you don't want to frustrate them, having them wait months and months to actually enjoy something that they've purchased a long time ago. I'm actually one of those who owns the Fallout 4 season pass, so I'm eagerly awaiting anything at this point. So with Fallout 3, they released 5 DLC packs within the first year of release. So I'm hoping something similar to that. I'm not getting my hopes up though, especially with the time frame we've waited to get this first DLC, and the fact that we still haven't heard anything on it. But yeah, no, that'd be insane if we could get 5 DLCs for Fallout 4 this year in 2016. So we've heard a lot of speculation as to potential locations. Some of them are quite far-fetched, others are a bit more reasonable. So we've heard Canada, which isn't too far from Boston geographically, New York, which is directly next to Boston, which I think would be a really cool place to go. So we've heard Great Britain, which I think is a little bit more far-fetched, although still an option, and I think it would be great to actually, you know, explore more of the world, because so far in the Fallout series we've only seen America. And I'd say the most far-fetched is the moon.
Where's the moon? Where's the damn moon?
Although we have been on a spaceship in Fallout 3, so I guess it's there. But the most speculated about has been the ocean. Something underwater. So we're going to jump on that bandwagon, throw our hat in the ring, and we're going to discuss some speculation. We're going to see what's plausible, see what's unlikely, and, you know, do some speculating of our own. So we know from looking at the Fallout 4 map, there's a lot of water, like a huge amount of water. I'd say roughly 25% of the map is water. But there's not a whole lot out there. So Reddit user, I don't want to muck this up, Lavonicus, he decided to go like full James Cameron and just go exploring the ocean floors. His name is James Cameron, the bravest pioneer. Looking for any shred of information that Bethesda may have discreetly hidden away down there. But I mean, aside from some like beautiful images, he didn't really find a whole lot.
No budget too steep, no sea too deep. Who's that? It's him, James Cameron.
The most interesting find probably is this strange looking sphere they found on the ocean floor. There's like a connection of pipes running to it, and there appears to be some sort of text written on the side of it. So we're not entirely sure what that is at this point. I don't know, maybe someone has figured it out. So I have to admit, this did kind of stand out to me and evidently quite a few other people. Bethesda don't often put things in their game with no reason behind them. They're usually like pretty accurate when it comes to detail. I mean, the calendars in the game are 100% accurate, which is like a really nice touch. But this isn't really enough to work off. Luckily, a crafty modder named XX Death Knight 72, he managed to discover hidden Harpoon Gun pretty early on in Fallout 4's release, and underwater animation. So that was whilst rooting through the game files. Now this could be linked to several things. Potentially it was just content that was initially meant to be in the game that ended up getting cut because it maybe wasn't completed in time for release. Or maybe it was content that was made to be added in later in DLC installments. But I know it could be both. It's not uncommon that in game development, something that's not prepared in time gets cut, but then is used later on in DLC. I know that was the case with Cryo Grenades in Fallout 3. They were initially meant to be in the final version of the game, but were cut, and then they were brought in during the Mothership Zeta DLC. So maybe that could be something. I don't know. The most interesting thing I think with the Harpoon Gun is that it actually works in game. So when you fire it, there is this little bubble animation that comes off like the arrows on the gun. So that seems to indicate that maybe it was intended for some sort of like underwater use, which is odd considering there's currently no underwater enemies or threats in Fallout 4. So maybe they weren't able to complete the idea, like I said earlier, for the game's launch, or maybe they plan to add underwater enemies in future DLC. One thing we do know is that Bethesda did cut a quest from the game called 20 Leagues Under the Sea, which involved underwater exploration, so maybe this is all linked to that cut content, I don't know. So other supporting factors for like a water-based DLC include the many ways Bethesda have allowed for like underwater breathing in the game. So if you're in power armor, you can breathe underwater for a long period of time. I'm not sure if it's indefinite. There is a perk in the game called Aqua Boy, which allows you to breathe underwater without taking any damage. There's a variety of foods, such as like My Alert cakes, which allow you to breathe underwater for 30 minutes. So yeah, I mean, they seem to add a lot in to actually allow you to breathe and explore the underwater areas without really leaving a whole lot down there. So, I mean, that's, I guess, a supporting factor for the DLC. There's other minor scraps that people have tried to use to support the underwater DLC theory, such as the fact that there's a Nahant Oceanological Society building in the game. But this is apparently based on the real-world Northeastern University Marine Science Center, as both are located on the eastern tip of Nahant. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. There is, however, like a hatch outside the research lab which looks to go directly down into the ocean floor. So perhaps maybe a location where DLC could begin. It does seem slightly out of place from when I've seen videos or images of it. I've seen other people using the ghoul whale, which is often referenced by NPCs in the game.
The ghoul whale is real. Old Peg, right outside the harbor.
As a hint to a potential underwater enemy. I don't believe this is anything. I think that this is just a reference to the, more words I can't pronounce, Yangtze submarine off the coast of Boston, which is captained by a Chinese military captain named Zhao. So he's ghoulified since the war and has not left the Boston harbor ever since. So that's where I think the whole ghoul whale comes from, is the ghoul in the submarine.
I'd heard Mirelurks were tiny before the bombs. Wonder what else might be plying those waters.
So we have a lot of supporting factors. I think personally, even if a lot of this stuff was just content that ended up getting cut from the game, I think at this point, Bethesda will probably put out some sort of underwater DLC just based on popular demand. Like, I mean, if you search any kind of DLC page, anything, if you look for Fallout 4 DLC anywhere on the internet, usually at the top of that list is underwater. So a lot of people speculate. There's been just, I think, so much demand at this point that it wouldn't surprise me if Bethesda, who are currently obviously working on the DLC, if they actually put their time into making this happen. Okay, so let's get on to the part that I'm most excited about. My own speculation, what I think we may see in an underwater DLC, what I'd like to see in an underwater DLC. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the lore of the Fallout franchise, I'll quickly explain a little bit about a specific group that I believe could be tied into an underwater level, and that's the Enclave. A group of America's top pre-war political and corporate leaders hid away before the bombs hit and didn't resurface for 200 years. The Enclave is 10 generations of breeding between politicians, military officials, and corporate executives. Direct descendants of the people that brought about the Great War. Oh, and you know all those super mutants and crazy mutated enemies in the Wasteland? Yeah, the Enclave is responsible for all of that. They were responsible for the FEV, Forced Evolutionary Virus, that caused genetic mutation. Yeah. That caused genetic mutation in super mutants and other Wasteland creatures. Now, how would the Enclave be linked to an underwater location? Well, for the 200 years before they resurfaced, that's exactly where they were set up. They were shacked up in a metal city that grew out of the ocean, an old oil rig owned by Poseidon Energy. So it may not be too unreasonable to assume that they may have set up once again undersea. Now we know that the Enclave oil rig was based off the coast of California, which is the wrong coast of America for our current location, but they did have means of travel. The Enclave were quite proud of their fleets of vertibirds, which they used to travel to and from their base. So it may not be too much of a stretch for them to have branched out towards the East Coast, especially considering the Enclave played a huge part in Fallout 3, which was Washington, D.C., not too far from Boston. So the Enclave oil rig was destroyed in Fallout 2 by the Chosen One. And the Enclave took a pretty heavy beating in Fallout 3. Maybe during that 10-year time period between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, the remnants of the Enclave fled to Boston and set up shop in the best way they knew how, in the same way that they'd survived for 200 years prior, by setting up underwater. After seeing all these underwater speculation, this was exactly where my mind went to. We haven't seen anything from the Enclave in Fallout 4, aside from the X-01 power armor, which looks very Enclave-esque. I'd love to see them appear in Fallout 4. I thought the Enclave were brilliant in Fallout 3. It was a great enemy to have. And I just think this would be a really good way for them to do it. We'll quickly just run through some of the other suggested ideas that I've seen online that could tie into an underwater DLC. So I've seen Alien City. Now, I'm not sure about this one. Fallout hasn't shied away from extraterrestrial life before, and there's even evidence supporting that the aliens may have been responsible for the Great War. So this could be interesting, but I very much doubt that if Bethesda revisit the whole alien idea, that it will be linked to the ocean. I think that maybe they will take us into space again. So the British have also been mentioned, with the historical significance Boston holds to America gaining independence from the British. Bethesda have kind of already played on this. They've put John Hancock into the game, Paul Revere's house, the USS Constitution. So perhaps Bethesda will play around a bit more on the beginnings of the colonial resistance. Oh, and the old church, there's 2 lanterns lit, so I guess the British are coming by sea. That's all I have time for today. I know this video is a little bit different to what we usually do on the channel.
Thumbs up.
But I wanted to try branching out, try some new ideas, test my hand at scripting. You'll have to let me know how it went on. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like down below. If you're new here, please subscribe. It really helps me out. And if you really want to support the content here, we are in fact on Patreon. So if you do have any spare cash, it really goes a long way to helping us actually make content for you guys. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.